Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Coffee with Carl. I am your host, as always, Carl Zellner, one of the attorneys with Anderson Business Advisors. And today I want to talk a little bit about a personal property trust. So, sort of 10,000-foot view here, personal property trust, it's just a grantor trust. We tend to label our trusts for what we intend them to do. Personal property trust tends to hold things that aren't real property or not real estate. So for a lot of our clients, we'll use personal property trust to hold things like potentially a brokerage account if you're doing, say, some day trading and your brokerage house is giving you a hard time about having that account held directly in an LLC with those live data feeds. Personal property trust could be a workaround with that. Say you have some existing business entities, you'd like to extend a little bit more anonymity across an existing entity structure. We can use a personal property trust or a series of personal property trusts to obscure single ownership of those entities as well. So a couple different uses there. One thing that's key is usually those, like I say, those personal property trusts do not directly hold title to real estate. We use them for personal property and they're drafted as such. So the land trust documentation we may use is going to be different than your personal property trust documentation. Also different than, of course, your living trust, right? Your living trust is intended for your estate plan. So all those documents are going to be different from each other. But I want to spend a little bit of time on the personal property trust just because there has been some additional questions. And even there's a couple of things to talk about. So personal property trust, like any of the grantor trusts we have, there's a grantor who is basically the person that's putting the property into the trust. The trustee, that usually is the titled owner of the asset, however, acts as more of a manager for those assets. And then you have the beneficiary. In most cases, for most of our trusts, with the exception of a living trust, usually the beneficiary is going to be a business entity because the type of asset protection you can expect for the assets held in trust is basically directly correlates with who or what the beneficiary is. So for our land trusts, for our personal property trust, the beneficiary, or I should say the final beneficiary, is generally going to be a business entity. A couple of questions that pop, or I'll just say the primary question that sort of pops up with a personal property trust is, and those of you that are familiar with our free content or our usage of land trust, we use a nominee trustee, is can my personal property trust have a nominee trustee? And short answer is yes, it can. The longer answer is it appropriate? That's more of a one-on-one conversation where we need to talk about sort of what the scenario is, how you're trying to interact with your trust or who your trust is trying to interact with as a third party. So that's something we definitely want to sit down and have a conversation about. So with that being said, the personal property trust is a great tool that's out there. It's not appropriate for every transaction. However, if you think it is or may have a use for one or like to take a look at one, please let us know. We're always happy to have a conversation with you about it, especially if you're a platinum client, part of your service that you can speak with any one of our attorneys. So make sure you're taking advantage of that program so we can spend some time chatting through some issues before hopefully prevent many of them before you step into something. That's sort of the overall goal. But yeah, I wanted to clear that up a little bit. Yeah, there can be a nominee trustee for a personal property trust too. We just want to look at it to make sure it's appropriate and you're not, giving up all of your ease of use by doing it. So until next time, thank you everyone for joining me with another episode of Coffee with Carl. Here we like to keep them short. If you would please, I would appreciate if you like, subscribe, and also share with a friend if you know somebody else who can get some benefit out of this stuff. So until next time, thank you all for joining me. And just a reminder, please keep taking advantage of all of our free content out there between our classes, our YouTube content. Toby, Clint and Michael put out a ton of stuff. So yeah, please keep taking advantage of all that free content out there. And we will catch you on the next episode. Thanks, everybody.